In the debate, you were asked to clarify if you believe Trump lost the 2020 election. Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that Donald Trump and I have both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future. I think there's an obsession here with focusing on 2020. I'm much more worried about what happened after 2020, which is a wide open border, groceries that are unaffordable. And look,
Senator,
Lulu,
yes or no?
Okay.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator
I think that's
Vance,
the question.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020
And I've answered
election?
your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
I have asked this question repeatedly. It is something that is very important for the American people to know. There is no proof, legal or otherwise, that Donald Trump did not lose the 2020 election.
You're repeating a slogan rather than engaging with what I'm saying, which is that when our own technology firms engage in industrial scale censorship, by the way, backed up by the federal government, in a way that independent studies suggest affect the votes, I'm worried about Americans who feel like there were problems in 2020. I'm not worried about this slogan that people throw. Well, every court case went this way. I'm talking about something very discrete, a problem of censorship in this country that I do think affected things in 2020, and more importantly, that led to Kamala Harris's governance, which has screwed this country up in a big way.
Senator, would you have certified the election in 2020? Yes or no?
I've said that I would have voted against certification because of the concern that I just raised. I think that when you have technology companies—
The answer is no.
When you have technology companies censoring Americans at a mass scale in a way that, again, independent studies have suggested affect the vote, I think that it's right to protest against that, to criticize that, and that's a totally reasonable thing.
So the answer is no.
That right there is JD Vance putting on full display exactly who he is and why he's Donald Trump's running mate. It's because he's willing to do the job that Mike Pence wasn't, which was to refuse to certify any election where Donald Trump didn't win. Vance is on the ticket because he will be a tool for Donald Trump to exercise whatever anti-democratic edicts the Republican God King demands of him. For a party of purported alphas, you will never find a group of more pathetic, obsequious supplicants than today's GOP. And I'm sorry, but censorship? That's Vance's brilliant deflection away from the basic question of whether Trump lost the 2020 election. Censorship? Are we seriously talking about, what, the Hunter Biden laptop story? The same issue that the Republican House Oversight Committee investigated, concluding in April 2024 that it did not find wrongdoing by Joe Biden with regard to Ukraine and his son's business dealings? I mean, come on, guys. The House Oversight Committee chair is right now James Comer. You think that if James Comer found wrongdoing, he wouldn't try to impeach Joe Biden? He's still the chair today. If Biden did something wrong, impeach him. But the fact that Republicans still didn't impeach him, even with a majority in the House, is all the proof you need that Hunter Biden's laptop story is a dud. And yet still, the fact that that's the deflection from JD Vance is outright pathetic. And by the way, even if there was something to the Hunter Biden story, that still doesn't come close to a US president refusing to accept the results of a free and fair election. I get that Republicans want desperately to traffic in the usual both sidesism that the media allows them to traffic in, but you are out of your mind if you think that censorship on Twitter is on any planet, in any universe, the same level as Donald Trump refusing to accept the results of an election and opting instead to incite an insurrection at the US Capitol. I mean, I'm sorry, but give me a fucking break. And this isn't the first time that Vance has been pressed on this issue. Here's Jason Selvig from the comedy duo The Good Liars also being pressed here.
Who won the 2020 election? Could you just answer, did Donald Trump win, yes or no?
Yes.
He did win?
Yep.
So will you concede? Will you concede? If your opponent gets more votes, will you concede?
I really feel bad for you, man.
I just want to know, if your opponent gets more votes, will you concede?
And of course, there was this disastrous moment from the debate that set all of this off.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
Has she?
And look, I get that JD Vance really thinks he's onto something here. That if he just draws this bullshit false equivalency and points to censorship, that he'll just fool everyone. That we're that undiscerning. And to that point, I should probably remind you what the immediate aftermath of the debate looked like.
And I actually want to start with overall impressions, guys, because all 7 of you came in undecided. 1 of you said they've made up their mind. Ryan, who are you going to vote for, and what kind of solidified that opinion?
Well, I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris. You know, one of the stark sort of aspects of that debate that really stuck with me was when they were talking about January 6th and how Mike Pence certified the election, and they were wondering if JD Vance would certify the election should Trump lose. And, you know, JD Vance didn't really give us a definitive answer, and I'm disappointed in that fact. And I don't think that I can trust someone, you know, with my vote if they're not going to respect it.
And that's because clearly, people aren't as stupid as JD Vance thinks. We can see what he's doing, why he was chosen, and most importantly, how dumb he thinks we are by trying to equate censorship with insurrection. He may frame himself as the slick alternative to Trump, well-spoken, articulate, more calm, but behind the glossy veneer, it is clear that the guy is little more than an empty vessel through which Donald Trump can push the exact same election denialism. Let's be clear, the reason, again, that Vance is on that stage and is parading himself around right now is precisely because of how he answered that question. It's not Mike Pence up there because he wouldn't do what Vance just promised to do. Donald Trump's entire VP vetting process was predicated on who would be willing to do his extrajudicial bidding. And Wallace himself made that point in real time.
Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
And again, the only reason that Vance was chosen was because he made it clear to Trump that his allegiance to the God King was more important than preserving or protecting American democracy. The notion that these people ever called themselves patriots is an absolute joke. So for anyone out there who is still undecided, this is what you get with Trump and JD Vance. There is no vision for the future, no policy proposals. Hell, if you've ever heard either one of these guys try to explain their position on childcare, your brain will start to leak out of your ears. These guys stand for one thing, ensuring that Trump and Republicans never lose another election. They are doing their level best to usher in the end of democracy as we know it. They are broadcasting as much on a daily basis. This is the warning. Whether we heed it is up to us. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.